to look over the minutes? Any changes, amendments, motions?
There was one correction. It was where something said, anyway, I did it, not you.
So, it's not a motion.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a motion, it was a question. Maybe that's.
Okay. Does it matter? Does it need to be updated? Okay. So we've got a slight change to the minutes, and then there was a discussion topic noted as started by Pam, it was actually started by Ruth, not on our copy of minutes in front of us actually.
Which discussion was it?
We don't have a copy of
I don't have a copy of the minutes, so.
Just okay. So we're gonna circle back to that motion. I'm gonna start some updates, so we don't keep everybody waiting, and come back to the motion when we found it. Does that work? Okay, so the Asheville Downtown Association updates. This month's ADA fact is that ADA is a nonprofit, and they give money to 5 other nonprofits in the amount of $2,000 each, so about $10,000 a year, and that's money raised from some of the community events that they host. There will be an open board seat or several this winter, so if you're interested in joining the ADA's board, you have to be a business or resident of downtown. And you can contact me for more information. We've got a couple months, we're just now starting to search for new members. We had another excellent speaker series. This time it was Michelle Mapp of the South Carolina Community Loan Fund. She was a tremendous resource, and her message is that cities have long been building infrastructure like we would normally consider roads an integral part of our cities, and her message is that we need to consider housing as infrastructure, as an integral part of our city. And she was here for a few days and met with a lot of people, and it was wonderful. We have a new art installation in place, the Lexington Life Column, which money was raised by the ADA Foundation, which is our another board of the ADA, and the project was managed by the city. Last time we talked about the Wall Street mural project, and it is moving forward. We have 4 artists that have been selected to provide full proposals, and the goal is to have it installed by November 30th. We also had a successful North Carolina Downtown Development Association meeting in large cities, which Megan, our director, was very involved in. It included representatives from Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Winston, Pike Point, Wilson, areas nearby. There is one more downtown after 5. It is our 30th anniversary season, and it's going to be a big one. It's this Friday, the 21st, a week from today. Excuse me. With the Far Side and Free the Optimist, our nonprofit partner is the Asheville Museum of Science. Lastly, the holiday parade applications are open. So the holiday parade this year is November 17th. The theme is the Appalachian Holiday. And for more information, you can go to the ADA's website. We can have some openings. Any questions about ADA business?
Where's the application on 21st?
21st. Oh, downtown after 5? It's on Lexington Avenue. It blocks the street and right under the bridge down by the center there.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's fairly large enough, but it is going to be fun with a really big band this time. It's a special event coming out. All right, moving on to the Parking and Transportation Committee. We have a new Assistant Director of Transportation, Jessica Morris, who's going to be joining us in that committee. She was wonderful. The subcommittee tends to take on projects, so right now we're working on loading zones. And if you remember, the downtown census last year flagged a few issues with loading zones. So we did a little mapping of it to see if it was all the loading zones are problematic or if some of them were. We found that there are some pocket areas. So now we're going to kind of take a step back and do a broader survey of not only the businesses that receive loading, but also businesses that deliver. So your shares, car services, your food delivery, like Uber Eats, I guess, is one of them. And the actual food delivery trucks, so the wine and beer vendors, food vendors, et cetera. So we're going to try and get a comprehensive amount of information about how the loading zones are working for other people. And I think the goal is to really make sure they're operating and as much as they can, fulfill as many needs as they can, but also maybe switch to metered spaces at some point in the day if they're not being used. Let's see. So I do want to mention the city lot. So the city took on a leased lot across from Buncombe County's new deck, and there was some confusion about what the spaces are, but there are monthly spaces available for $70 a month. Right now, you're calling the Department of Transportation or Department of Services Department to get on the list.
each artist was given one letter to design, so each letter is independently designed by an artist. And we are planning on a celebration of that on Thursday, October 4th at 5 o'clock, or 5:30, I have to double check on that, but 5:30, just an informal celebration, food trucks, buskers, and all the artists will be there, and there'll be photo opportunities, and folks to just come and celebrate the bit of love.
Bit of love, thank you.
Sorry.
Spies has joined us. Okay, Steve Lee, can we hear from you on design review, and then beforehand, we'll go back to the minutes, because we found the information.
Okay, so the design review committee met on August the 21st. We had two projects that we discussed that were presented. The first was with the Flatiron Hotel project. I believe it's a rezone request that maybe going for conditional zoning request that maybe going forward, but a switch from Class C office space to hospitality. Primary discussion was about public sidewalks and public space in front of the building along Battery Park Avenue. We saw some sketches that were beginning to explore some changes to those spaces that would better accommodate outdoor dining opportunities and perhaps functions of the improvements to the building. It included a couple of loading zones that were being proposed, reducing the width of the road, Battery Park Avenue, which was demonstrated that today's, it appears to be excessively wide, but adding a bike lane. The committee discussed some of the basic understandings about the needs for minimum widths on public access through the space, public sidewalks, the critical need for parking in the area, etc. We saw some very schematic sketches, so those will be moving forward and getting more refined. The second item was a variance request by Patton Apartments. I know we're discussing that today, so there's just some technical details on that, and I'll just leave it at that. But that's it.
Great. Any questions? Thank you for that. We're going to interrupt for a second, go back to where we started, which was approving the minutes. We found a change. So it sounds like in the last paragraph before it says downtown design review, the statement says they are now waiting on Duke, and Ms. Winter offered to reach out to Duke. The direction is that Ms. Summers will be reaching out to Duke. Offer to minor correction. So pending that change, does anyone have a motion to approve the minutes with that?
That's in the last paragraph of the first page.
Yeah, we're looking at a phone, so I can't see pages. It's right, the last sentence before it says downtown design review. About reaching out to Duke.
Looking at the wrong design. Let's see. I see.
Okay. Motion? Would you make it some sort of amendment?
Move to approve the minutes
With the amendment?
with the amendment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. These are approved. That moves us on to you, Dan, with the downtown update report.
Good morning, Commissioners. A couple of these updates were mentioned already, but they are great projects, so I will just mention them again. Lexington Avenue Public Art was installed last week, so if you haven't seen it, check it out. Visiting Artist Program, so the city's first ever Visiting Artist Program kicked off in July, and the program focuses on creating community-driven artwork that also promotes Asheville's African American history and culture. And they will expect the proposals from the finalists on Monday, so the finalists spent a good amount of time here at the end of July. And once we receive those proposals, we're gonna make them available for public review. So early next week, there's gonna be a survey So, council at the end, in August, approved a contract for design and construction administration. So we have, Bill Engineers is leading that effort, so we have them on board. And the plan is to work on design and public engagement this fall and winter, with construction beginning in May. Construction will begin with the MST sewer line replacement work, and then we'll be doing the sidewalk replacement and street repaving. We'll definitely have the consultants come in here and talk with you all, probably in the next, probably next month. College Street repaving, so that's between Broadway and Spruce Street. That is scheduled to begin on Monday, although with the rain expected, that may get delayed. But that work is expected to last 2 to 3 weeks, and there will be one lane closed at a time, but the street should not be entirely closed at any one time. Community EMT pilot program launched at the end of August, on August 29th, and it's planned to continue through mid-October. And firefighter teams are collecting information and data to help measure the program. Your feedback is welcome. So keep me posted or reach out to Assistant Fire Chief Barry Hendren. And I asked if you all would like an update in October, at your October meeting, so that they can let you all know what they've learned so far and how it's going. Downtown open office hours, we'll have John Philin back again next week. So maybe we can continue some of the discussions that are going to take place today about events in public space. So that is next week from 3 to 5. Come by and talk to us. And a couple of follow-up items from last month. So the Central Avenue lights are installed. It took a long time. Yay. So they should be working and everything, and they're finally up. So that's great. We talked a little bit about transit service interruptions last month, and there were a lot of mechanical issues in July, and it's really about, I have very detailed notes here, so it's really about our schedule to purchase new buses and get those in operation, which is underway, and those issues should have been resolved towards the end of July and improved in August. So if you're still seeing a lot of service disruptions, let us know. I'll share with our transit staff, but also if you'd like a more detailed explanation of what went on there, I have that. So I'm happy to email that around.
Question. So
Yeah.
it was explained to me that we have a new transit management company and that they are responsible for managing, repairing equipment, but we're supplying the asset. It's kind of stated like how when we handed them our assets, they were in bad shape. So that all this maintenance was really neither one's fault, but who is responsible for the maintenance?
So the buses, as I understand, are really towards the end of their useful life. And so, to my knowledge, yes, that operator is responsible for the repairs. The fleet is what it is, and now we're purchasing, I think it's 5 new buses a year in order to get newer buses in operation and service. But
That's another understaffed maintenance crew.
We have a what?
Understaffed maintenance crew.
Understaffed maintenance.
Have a hard time getting.
So is there a maintenance, I know that it's contracted out now, but is there like a worker plan for maintenance to go along with the acquisition or purchase of new buses? So that the staggering of what's needed to keep things operating is.
So let me go over what I have here. So when the issues arose in July, staff and the management company put together an action plan, including the following: outsource major engine overhauls to expedite their return to service. Management company took care of that. Recruit additional maintenance staff to implement a third shift, which can work through the night to address larger maintenance problems. And lease a 12-passenger ADA van, which can be used as backup for emergency situations. So those actions were taken immediately. Long-term actions, transit staff says it's important to understand that one of the primary issues is that is the overall age of the fleet, and that a large number of vehicles are reaching their useful life. Previous bus purchases were done infrequently. As a result, over 30% of the fleet is out of its useful life. So the new fleet replacement schedule was put in place in 2017, and the city's on track to purchase 5 new buses every year.
decision on whether it's going to be blue stem or concrete or something?
There's not, no, so going into this design process, it's possible that bluestone could be pursued or another material. So there is, I think, enough money to do something outside of the standard. That's something that will be explored in the design process. And we didn't hear any comments about that yesterday, which was a little bit surprising to me, but it did come up yesterday.
Okay. Any other questions for Dana? Oh, I had one more from you and Bronte. Does anybody know the budget for the Love Asheville installation signage posters?
$7,000.
$7,000. Okay. Anything else? I don't see Mike Sewell.
He said he'll be late, so he'll move on to the just update.
Okay, so Mike Sewell's been here talking about the technical urbanism update for South Slope, Cox Avenue. He is not here yet. And I think we need to go ahead and mark Andrew Fletcher as absent. Okay, so we'll circle back to Mike when he arrives. We're on to new business. So downtown design review, Patton Place Apartments. We're gonna hear from staff and we're gonna hear from the developers. And we need to acknowledge, is there anyone at the dais that has a conflict of interest and needs to be removed from this conversation?
That would be me.
Also, the mics seem to be hot. Is there something we can do about that? It's hard for me to hear.
Turn it down a little more.
Buzz.
Yep, there is like a,
I can't
I hear it. I'll make it finish. It's coming, it's upstairs. Oh, that's better, there it goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it takes a while.
It doesn't, I mean, I don't know.
Thank you, Dan.
Is that okay?
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that Stephen D. Johnson is recused from the following discussion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so, members of the public, we're gonna hear from staff, then we're gonna hear from design or developer, and then we're gonna have some discussion, and then hear from the public if there's a chance, if anybody's interested in speaking on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm Sasha Martinsky, for anybody who knows me, but we're here today to talk about a variance for Patton Place Apartments. This is at 248 Patton. You've probably seen it coming out of the ground. They're getting very close to being completely done with the project. Part of that project, some of you were here maybe for that design review, actually probably the majority of you may not have been actually. So the way that project is laid out is on Pearl Street, which is a side street. It has a garage entrance, and the garage is wrapped with fancy junction, so you don't see it very much except for a few different angles. So as a part of one of the requirements of their garage is to have an ADA van space. And an ADA van space takes a taller ceiling height than a normal garage for regular cars, I should say. And that height is 98 inches. So a couple months ago, it was discovered that the height in the garage is not that tall. It's 7 feet. So the ADA van space cannot be accommodated by building code in the garage. So their solution has been to, they had a room here. So this is the garage entrance here. They had a room here. Oh, sure, I'm sorry. This is Pearl Street. Up here would be Patton Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
So, so their solution is to use this room that was previously going to be used for something else, to turn it into a single ADA van space. It's plenty wide inside there, and it actually meets all the code and everything. So when we talk about ADA issues, equivalency is, is important, that you're not making the ADA facilities less than what they are for everybody else. So our building code officials have deemed that this would be equivalent and just as good. It's covered, it's inside the building, all of those things. Now the problem is that in our UDO, we have a provision that doesn't allow you to use a single off-street parking space. You to use the right-of-way as a maneuvering space. So it means basically you use this space, you're really non-conforming now. I think of Market Street, and some of these lawyer buildings where there's people parking right off the street and come right back out. So that's what we don't really want happening.
It's mostly a safety issue.
So they're seeking a variance. In your packet that you saw, that you got, maybe Monday, I guess, there's also a letter from an engineer. Part of what they're gonna have to go to planning and zoning commission and prove a hardship. And they're gonna have to prove that this is really the only thing they can do. So they have a letter from an engineer and their architect, who I believe their architect is here today, saying basically there's no other physical way to retrofit the building to accommodate this space. Because we've had conversations, Charlie with them about maybe not dig out for the basement or maybe, take something off to get to that 98 inches. So the weather system cause failure. The good side of this is that it's Pearl Street and it's not a major road in our downtown. Obviously still the not so great part of this, and I didn't put this in the report, which I should have, is that we really tried to have one driveway per block face on a development. So we're adding a second driveway. But at the same time, we don't expect it to be used for a lot of people. So there's some moderating impact there. I'll let the applicant talk if you don't have any other questions.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
If we do this, or I guess in some of the older grandfather situations, are there other things that we do to ensure that it's safe? Like those reverse mirrors across the streets, are there other requirements?
They've installed some mirrors in the building. I think they can talk about that. And unfortunately, Kim Putnam, our transportation director, couldn't make it today. Staff will be looking at the safety.
Do you know, and maybe this is for the developer, where this location is, if it also makes it more accessible in terms of, the width of getting out of the wheelchair, or if someone, has a different, difference.
Right.
I just, besides the parking spot itself, the surrounding areas of when the person is
Right.
getting in or out of that.
I'm not sure. You think you could probably answer that question.
Any other questions for Sasha? Time comes up? Okay. Thank you, Sasha. Frank, that's it. If you could just about introduce yourself.
My name's Daniel Jimenez. I'm the owner-developer of Delray Ventures. We're the development firm for this project here at 240 Pat. And then I have my architect also here. This is Mark Ward, client designer. So as Sasha mentioned, really the issue is that we don't have room for an ADA van space in the existing precast parking garage. And part of the reason why we have to find an alternative space is really goes back to a public-private partnership with the city of Asheville. We relocated a storm sewer line that was actually directly to the center of this property. And we rerouted it around Patton Avenue down Pearl Street and tied it into Hilliard. We did the best we could based on existing surveys and conditions that we had in the field. However, some of those surveys didn't provide the most accurate information on what was truly in the ground. So some adjustments need to be made, everything being tied into a storm detention box that's located underneath our parking garage. So that really is what changed the kind of dimensions of what we need to work with to make footings and therefore place the parking deck where it is. So the best we could do was to come up with a 7-foot clearance. And we have acknowledged we need to provide a van ADA space, and it needs to be equivalent to the other spaces in the garage. So what we've done is provided a space that is still covered. It has a 11-foot van space, which is the requirement, and then an additional actually 6 feet of accessibility route, not 5 feet, which is what's required. So we've actually expanded that, and we've provided a ramp to get out of that van space, and it is actually just as close as the previous van space we're going to have in the parking deck, and you can see kind of the route that will lead you to the entry point. So that's really the reason why we are proposing this solution, and we feel like it's the best alternative solution there is. property is, and I think what the city of Asheville would like, and we also like urban developments. They're very difficult, but they're also lot line to lot line. So you really don't have much margin for error. However, when things like this happen, I think we have to be mindful of trying to find the best alternative solution. Also be code compliant and be safe for whoever the residents are. And I think this does achieve all those things. And to answer one of your questions, we have installed convex mirrors on each side. You can see it's kind of small in that note, but they're on each side of the entry point and I guess egress point for entering into that van space.
And so in terms of other safety needs, having an isolated parking spot for anyone, especially someone different able, can be a different kind of safety hazard. And so is there additional lighting? Is there like cameras? What else is there so people feel like they're not coming to an isolated space that further exposes them to security risks?
Well, I think there's I want to say maybe 6 kind of long tube fluorescent lights in there. So I mean, it's probably as lit as it can be able to stay lit up at all. I think 24/7. So I don't think the lighting will be an issue. This space is, you can see how close it is to the rest of the parking garage. And again, this is the open space of the parking deck, so it's before you get to the security gate, which was where the original van space was also designed for. So I think it still meets, and actually may even have been a better location. It seems kind of like almost a VIP space for the ADA person or persons that are trying to visit our complex. So we think, while it wasn't intentional, it may be actually a better space than what we had originally designed.
What was the original plan for that space?
We actually were planning to provide 2 handicap spaces side by side. I believe where the trash bin is located on the design. So you were just basically just going to access that route and follow the path from there. And we had 2 spaces there, and you just share the NDA striping in between the 2 spaces.
At what point in this process did you learn that there was a clearance issue? Because I feel like the deck went first.
It did. It really wasn't until we installed all of the piping underneath, which took up more than what we had hoped for. So it wasn't until then. We were also looking for alternative methods if we could to try and still make the parking deck work as it was designed. And we also looked at maybe trying to make enough space within the opening so that there wasn't an accessible route to walk through, but maybe find a space there. It just wasn't possible. So we tried to basically spend a couple of months looking for something before we presented it to the city.
Sorry. And this is really about ADA van visiting to locate people who are driving around. So not a residential space for a particular resident in the complex, right?
Well, it could be,
It could be.
either one.
Okay.
Either one.
But you need all the other ADA space numbers.
Correct. I think we have 5 or 6 other handicap spaces. Those 2 meet the requirements.
Will this space have a garage security gate on it?
This space does not. No, it's the same as it was before. The security gate is actually, you can see it's kind of on the northwest corner of this page. And so the idea was that if you are a visitor or if you are a resident, you can park there without having to expect to go through an actual gate.
So there's no extra security in here for the person that parks. So basically they get out of the van and then I see the slope, and so the part is this all walkway in here with hatch marks? Or?
Correct. It's all along.
Okay, so how far does that van accessible space, how far does that person have to go to actually get into the secure building?
You see where the gate is right there. There's actually a swing door gate next to it. It's a pedestrian gate. So it's basically right there into the building.
So does that have a handicap automatic door opener on it?
It has a fob access control, which is basically
I know, but an automatic door that
does not have
fob?
automatic they needed to enter into the building, they would have to go outside of the building, and if they had special ramp access needs, they would have to go to the front door.
It seems like an awful long way for someone to have to go. I don't know why this can't be a door that, you know, that has a fob, but it also has an automatic opener.
I don't think that's required by code. And my architect can speak on that.
Hi, my name is Mark Ward. Your question, ma'am?
Well, it was how far this person had to go, and that's not an automatic door, so if they're handicapped, they're not gonna be able to open that door. So, the gentleman before you
Sure.
just said they need to go outside and then come in the front of the door
Well, the
on Patton Avenue.
yes, the path is actually, the interior path, is accessible by the requirements of the North Carolina Building Code and the accessibility code. I understand your question. So the intent is for the gated section to be for residents. So it's a resident secure parking.
Right, but if a resident is different abled, then.
So if a resident, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If a resident is different abled or someone has a visitor that's different abled, they still need to be able to get access.
That's correct. So if a resident is different abled, then they have a fob system that once they get close to the door, it automatically unlocks and you can push it right in. Now, if there's a guest, just like any other able-bodied guest, a resident would have to come down and let them in to that.
Let me make sure I understand the question, because what I'm hearing is if you are different abled, I'm not really the term different abled, so you're going to have to exit the building and go out on Patton Avenue and then return into the building because there is not an automatic door that allows you in from the interior. So is there a way to add one of those push-button automated doors on the interior?
I'm sure that there
I
is,
think that's what I'm
but
hearing.
I think we are providing a way for someone to be able to access the interior of the garage just like an able-bodied person. It's the same, it's a security issue, but it's the same, they have the same access as you or I, same ability to access.
All the way up here, yeah.
If we run, we would still have to have, like you said, a resident who gets or in the front building.
That's right.
We'd be.
Well, we have to have a resident come get, come and let you in.
So they'll be treated differently,
But if you're different abled, you may not be able to push the door. That's the
what we're
issue.
saying.
but somebody would come down and be there.
No,
But even if you're a resident, you may
Oh,
not be
you're a
able to
resident.
push the door, and so that actually is not acceptable.
So I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. So when the key fob deactivates the door, it unlocks so that it can be pushed open.
Right, but it doesn't have an
Well,
automatic door.
And that is not required by accessibility code.
So, okay.
You just gotta be able
let's regroup for a
to
second.
move through the door.
What we're doing here is acknowledging that this developer is saying they cannot find another way to do this. So I don't know that we, as part of the design review, can say you can do this if, like, it's really gonna go to planning and zoning, who will make the final decision on this. So we can send along our recommendations and we can say, we support this change with the amendment that there is an automated door within the interior that allows the visiting guest or resident to have access. So we can send along that recommendation to P and Z. We aren't the formal voting body on our website. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's, we're kind of getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a door to the parking unit, there's no code requirement to have push buttons on every door that's going on the counter. There's maneuverability clearances and things that are accessible to them to ensure that they can get in, but push buttons aren't common for residential.
Well, and I think, and this is extenuating circumstance, right? We're trying to relocate an ADA compliant space that if it were within the secured garage as planned, it would have those tools. So,
I
that's
think
it.
what he's saying is the experience for the successful van space is the same, whether it's in this room or its original plan. Is that correct?
That's correct. The original plan for that space was outside of that security area as well.
Interesting, okay.
So all we're doing is looking.
Right. That I appreciate clarity.
Sure.
I think what we're looking at is that we're back into the street to get this comment.
Right.
And how's that different than what the trash folks do? But otherwise, the experience is the same for the vans that were built.
We can
Garage proper.
Yes, we believe so.
So I would encourage, if you want to make a motion, Kimberly, you were stating
I'm
here.
not making a motion right now, I'm a little angry.
Oh, okay. addresses the concerns that came from the commission.
I have a question, it's, does the van not, it can't even go into a space that's 7 feet tall, or it has to be parked in a space that's taller than 7 feet? Can the van come in the building and turn around? Does it
No.
have to turn?
No, we have 7 feet clearance once you get into the building. And by the accessibility code, the van clearance has to be 8'2".
To park, or they can't even travel on shorter space? To go-
They can't even travel into a shorter space because vans are, those accessible vans are really tall. So that's why we have to maintain those clearances.
So the farthest you can get into your building is where this hatch tag starts on the.
That's correct, yeah. And probably about 3/4 of the way there because we're ramping into that space.
Did you look at turning the van out of that space?
Well, you may be able to turn the van around, but that's a ingress and egress area. So there's no way we can get a parking in that space. And adjacent to it, seemed like the best and only alternative. We also, Daniel didn't mention it, but we looked for other areas on the site to park, but as you folks have probably seen the building, it's right against the sidewalk. And there was really nowhere else to access the site for this type of parking.
Any other questions?
So what's gonna be the nature of the curb, you have 2 curb cuts in the front, did you already have a curb cut plan for the garbage?
I think there was a, I don't recall if there was a curb cut there already. And I don't recall if we had one for the garbage, but I would assume that there would have been one for the garbage anyway.
What was gonna be the plan for taking up the garbage before and then versus now with the garbage?
So it's basically the same plan, the bins have been relocated. That was originally the garbage space. And so that the garbage bins would be pulled out to the edge of the street once or twice a week, or how many times they have to pick up for the truck to come, get the bins, empty them, and then staff would push them back into the space, into the storage.
But they're definitely not gonna be in the room with the van.
No. To get this whole space to work, we've relocated them inside the deck. So for all intents and purposes, we've reversed the uses of those 2 spaces. So the van space used to be where the trash is now going to be, and the van is now where the trash used to be.
Is this an alley here, or?
One of the problems we're having with locating ourselves is that there are no street names on this
I
diagram.
believe that may be the bottom edge of the building, correct? Right there.
Yes, that is the
So
bottom
there's an
edge.
adjacent house to this property.
Yes.
So the street continues, there's no alley. as far as-
May I put something up here, Tom? If this helps.
And if you could point to the areas that you're talking about, that would be helpful as well.
So, this is Patton. This is Pearl. Our space is right down here at the back corner of the building. This is an adjacent property at the back of the building.
It's a single family property, it's not a,
So the trash truck is gonna come down the alleyway?
No, there's no alley here.
It's just
It's just an adjacent property. It's gotta come down Pearl.
The trash truck is never gonna pull into the building, I think it's
No.
rolling carts out to the curb, just like in the
Because that's a clearance issue. Okay.
Okay, I think that was always.
As far as the van pulling in and out, one good thing to note is that Pearl Street ends at both ends, so it's not a very heavily used through street. You know, so I think that's a good factor.
Speak to me. I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna say something. So, you know, this is my one opinion and I wanna say it on record. I really, overall, have been excited about this project because it means that there's more opportunity for folks who live and play downtown and work downtown to walk and actually get to where they're going by foot or by wheelchair or by motorized, some kind of vehicle that will help them. I I think with this project, and I understand variances, and that's fine, I think my disappointment comes with, although you did what you needed to do on the front end, and obviously you overcame the challenges underneath the ground, truth be told, this building is for people, all people, and different able people have a lot of things they deal with on a daily basis. As soon as they get up and walk out of their house, that actually oppose their ability to be like everybody else. And it's our responsibility as community members to make sure that when we're adding things in our community, that they keep in mind the needs of people. Like if you're on a walker and that's how you get around, you can't stabilize yourself on a walker and open a heavy door. And so I understand the need for this, but I'm also extremely disappointed that the complete entirety of all the component, I know it's not required, but sometimes just going the extra mile, because it's the best thing to do for people who live somewhere, is a thought process as well. And so I just want to add that, because I know this is a necessity, but I'm disappointed with the approach to what people need to actually just function daily.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions or comments? I'm willing to try and make a motion. Okay, so, in fact, let me correct myself. Before we make a motion, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this? Thank you, sir. Any members of the public? So, 9:21, we close the public comment. Okay, so, we have suggested motion, what we're gonna have. Thanks, that's what I was thinking. Okay, right there. Okay, I move to recommend approval of the variance request for 248 Patton Avenue for the, there's a typo, for the standards as outlined in section 7-11-2B6 for maneuvering in the right of way. With the recommendation that greater accessibility features, including automated doors, be reviewed to ensure that the access is optimal for different able beings. Oh, we have to add and change that. Okay. Can I get a second? Any further discussion? A reminder, this will go to planning and zoning with our recommendation. We could perhaps look more in depth at this issue and try to get them to make some adjustments if needed.
I want to just add that if there's a way to just also evaluate that the lighting would be appropriate in the evening for someone who's different able to get to that door. I know that this is not what we're voting on, but if it's going to planning and zoning, I would like this piece.
And those are the things they can look at, is the lighting, the access, the ramp, the grades, those are all in planning and zoning as well. So we're also adding that, I guess we could just say that the facilities, lighting, access, entryways are of optimal performance for differently able and all able beings. So we have a first, we have a second. Does
To
anybody need that?
continue that discussion,
Okay.
we are really trying to make this space as similar as possible to everyone else's space. Like right now, this plan shows them park in their own room. Maybe there's something you can do design-wise to make that not, to make it feel like it's still part of where everyone else is parking, and it's not in a country box with an extra door. I don't know if there's a design solution that makes it more similar to the rest of the parking.
We can't cut any more of those walls because we would sacrifice the structural integrity of
We
what's
can't make
behind.
any changes to your building. So is the building currently occupied?
Yes.
So what's happening now for the accessibility?
Could you take up to the mic again, please?
So right now, the space that's for an ADA maintenance space essentially has to be parked in our neighbor's parking lot, and we have to valet it essentially. We have a personal staff call, will basically be escorting them to the building by whatever means necessary. If we just have to push them over in their wheelchair or whatever the means is, that's currently how we're being, or how we are handling any ADA van customers. And that was also discussed and approved by Mark Matheny, the building code, and planning department.
Brent, was that an amendment to the motion?
I think it's just another comment that the goal is for this space to not be different than it would normally be designed to code, but maybe there's more design alternatives that can make it not feel so separate. I don't know what that would be. If everything that's built is untouchable, I'm not sure what that solution would be, but like looking at this plan, it's hard to tell whether this is a very exclusive spot that has its own ramp and it's very secure and you have this deluxe style parking space, or if it's just a concrete enclosure.
A trash
separated
bin.
from the
Yeah.
club, so.
Original location for trash.
So it's hard to know like how this changes the experience of the.
Ms. Dahl, were you able to record any of that motion that you can bring back to us?
There's a suggested motion, which you have, and then there was an amendment to the motion with the recommendation that greater emphasis on accessible features, including automated doors, lighting, access, and entryways be reviewed to ensure that access is optimal for differently abled and all ability people.
So perhaps in there we could add, maybe.
I think we just encourage the design team to make this experience similar to what it would be if it were typical garage ADA van space, rather than being parked in a trash room with an extra door somewhere.
Maybe add that first sentence and not the last one.
Say that again, Mark.
We're
Not
going to encourage the design
the
team to enhance the trash room to create the same experience as a typical garage van ADA space. Because I don't think the travel distance is any further than where they had it, it's just, you're completely separated. So, more it's connected to what the normal experience would be.
Are you guys supplying an ADA van, or this is something that's a service in the community? And you don't own a van anymore. Did you capture that motion? You feel good about it?
Yeah, so encouraging the design team to use that to make the space feel less
Separated.
separated.
These are all recommendations that will go to the planning and zoning board. And if anyone's feeling passionately about it, you can also reach out to them and let them know your concerns. No, you can't do that.
It's a quasi-judicial matter, they're only voting on what's currently here, so please don't reach out.
Please don't do that, really. I've never heard that. Okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
Your minutes and everything will be forwarded.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we have discussion, no public comment. All in favor? Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we're gonna need some hands, so opposed, we had 1, 2. In favor, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. So the motion carries, we have 2, 1 recused, 2 nays. So we've got Johnson recused, Summers nay, Hunter nay, all others nay. Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Good luck with P&Z. Okay. We are on to the next item. So I see Mike Sewell has joined us. Is everybody good with jumping back to that? Okay. John, gentlemen, are you good on time? Just if you might, and then come back to you. Great. All right, Mike Sewell. Do you have help for today?
I do, yes. I apologize for being late. My wife's on call. I'm on that leave.
It's okay, welcome.
I was a champion here. So I am Mike Sewell. I'm with Asheville on Bikes. Our mission is to cultivate the culture of urban and community riding through advocacy and celebration. We believe cycling has a direct impact on the health of our community. But I come before you today as a representative of the Asheville Street Tweets team. We Asheville Street Tweaks team is a partnership between Asheville on Bikes, Blue Ridge Bicycle Club, and AARP. Our project is a tactical urbanism project, and in a nutshell, tactical urbanism is the approach to active transportation in which we use temporary facilities to test, innovate active transportation, and we then learn from what we put in place. If something needs to be moved or tweaked or improved upon, we can come out with a power washer or undrill some facilities, move it, and so we plan, implement with temporary materials, study how those materials function, and tweak when necessary to reach a point of total maximization, if you will. We've been working really closely with the city on Asheville's first tactical urbanism project, which is slated to be on the south end of Cox Avenue. You see, what's that? Okay, yeah, Hilliard, from Hilliard all the way down to
South
the South Slope.
side.
South side, on the South Slope. Can I go back to the top? Okay. So these are our preliminary designs, or the most recent ones that we have. There will be tweaking. For example, we just heard back from NCDOT yesterday, and they had some recommendations. So we'll have to make some adjustments. But I'd like to go through some of the facilities that we're talking about. If you look at let's go, sorry.
You're okay.
There we go, okay. So let's go to Hilliard and Cox Avenue, and you can see the sort of square-like rectangle. What we're proposing goes there is Asheville's first street mural. So we will actually be putting public art in that crosswalk space to open it up, create a welcome. As you move south, you see a green rectangle. That green rectangle is a type of bicycle facility. It's called a bike box. And what that does is that enables cyclists moving up to the intersection to move up and merge into the front. You move the stop bar back. So cyclists have 20 feet, so when the light changes, they get the first movements ahead of vehicular traffic. I'm going to step off the mic. Is there a point? Not right here, right? I'll just point.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so this kind of tan, orange area, this is a test facility, and what we're proposing is that actually becomes a sidewalk extension / multi-use facility. So bicyclists and pedestrians will be able to use that corridor, or that tan line there. And where you see sort of the darker brown, that is where we are suggesting that we close or neck down the curb cuts. Cox Avenue has a tremendous amount of curb cuts, so if we kind of close those, we make it better facilities for pedestrians and cyclists to navigate. I'm going to move on down. Are there any questions about that so far?
That's awesome.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Are you suggesting this is one way now? Or is it still two-way?
No, it's still two-way.
Okay, got it.
It's still a two-way street.
Okay.
It's still a two-way street.
What's the lifespan of these painted things? If you can pressure wash them?
Right, so a lot of that depends on the materials that we use, and what we're working on right now with the city with our the draft MOU, that's sort of the thing that we've all been sort of scratching our head, is that eventually all of this will be taken up because this whole corridor is going to be redeveloped. So this is sort of an interim step to sort of test facilities to see which way we ultimately want to So what we are proposing is like a year and a day. The idea is that we will build it in November 1st through the 3rd.
Those are that's actually.
That is our target. Yes, absolutely. And then as we go, we will assess what needs to be changed. There might be some freshening up that might have to happen in the spring. I mean, one of the things that's a really great opportunity with doing this in November and then sort of having like a relaunch in the spring is we get to test how it functions during weather events, which is a really great thing to
Road salt.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So what street plans our design team is working, contracted with us as our consultant, they feel that like using latex paint with grit, they've used it in other areas and it has weathered throughout the year. Now, all right, now we are at Banks and Buxton, and what we're going to do, there already is an existing crosswalk across Cox that connects to Banks Avenue. We are going to freshen that up. In that same sort of, between Banks and Buxton, that whole area that's sort of hash marked in, that will also be another street mural. So the idea here, this area is already really being activated a lot with businesses and pedestrians. So we really want to make this sort of, think about it in terms of a pedestrian priority zone. And make it really easy and exceptional for people to move about, aesthetically pleasing. So we're also working with the city to see if we can install stop signs on Cox Avenue when you come to the Buxton Avenue intersection, and then again on Banks. So a vehicle would stop at Buxton, proceed, and then stop at Banks and move on. And that will really help calm the traffic and make it a more pleasant place, a safer place for people to move about. We also are working on necking down some of the curb cuts again, so that there's more room for people, and putting in all those little boxes right there. Those are designed to be planters. So we'll have like planters and some nice plants to go with it. Trying to figure out what we plant in November.
Any new street trees or anything? Just planters.
Not at this point. So when we went through and we went in identifying, the city identified through the standards and specs, there are some real limitations on what we can do with planters and height. So trees, as of right now, are not part of the project. But again, this is like the first time this is being done. This is a test. So the idea is to learn. So that this might help change future standard and specs. Who knows, right? That's what we're going to figure out as much as we can learn. And then the corridor, or the tan lines, that sidewalk extension / multi-use that goes all the way down to the bottom. And any questions about this?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of lots of on-street parking.
Yes.
When we did the parking crawl, we saw, I don't remember how many dozens on this particular road that have yet to be metered and were just essentially free. It looks like we're moving a lot of that on-street.
No. When we did the public,
Is that what the little?
yeah, so when we did the public charrettes to get, all of this has been informed by community input. And one of the things that came to the top, it's sad for me, but the community has said that, on-street parking needs to be a critical component of our city infrastructure, and especially on Cox Avenue. Now, I can editorialize how there's a parking deck, right? But the community has spoken. The community has spoken. So what we're actually doing is you have the travel lane, you have on-street parking, and then you have a protected facility for people. I'll go over there and just show it to you. So, here's your sidewalk extension, here's your on-street parking, and here's your travel lane. Usually the parking is right next to the sidewalk.
Is the city gonna meter this parking at the same time all this goes in? No? Okay.
No.
More about that later.
Well, I mean, they are going to come back and like redo it all, so there's probably a lot to learn, you know? Maybe people will love so much the active transportation that they'll say, geez, this on-street parking and the space that's occupied by one person driving one car, we can accommodate 30 people, make it safe for all kinds of people to move about our city. We'll see what happens.
How long did it take you to get from this idea to where you are today?
Well, that's a good, in 2014, Asheville hosted the North Carolina Bike Walk Summit, and I was on the team to organize that, and I made it a point to bring Mike Leiderman of Street Plans as a keynote speaker to sort of pitch the idea of a tactical urbanism approach. So I'll put the mark right there. Yes.
It's incredible. Congratulations for getting this far. I mean, we don't have anything like this in the city, and the street art is going to be amazing. Very excited. I'm curious how many vehicles use Cox Avenue every day.
So first of all, thank you, and secondly, this has been a great partnership with Asheville City staff. Sasha, oh yeah, hooking me up with the map, and like the transportation team has been like incredible and has made this a very easy process. So.
And it sounds like lots of community input along the way.
I believe so. And so what was your? I'm sorry.
How many vehicles travel on Cox Avenue every day?
So the city just did, one of the things that we requested was a transportation, a fresh count, and I know that they just pulled the tubes up, I think on yesterday or the day before. So I don't have those numbers, but when I do have them, I'll be more than happy to share. And we're also going to do some ped bike counts and movement counts as well. So we'll have that updated data.
It'd be great to get those numbers again on the tail end.
That's exactly
Next year,
right.
yeah.
Right.
I'm curious if it'll push cars to other roads, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the
Yeah.
measure.
That's great.
That's why we're measuring it.
Okay.
Yep.
Who's doing the street art? Is there a public process for that, or is like who gets to do the fun mural on the road?
Yeah, right. So we're working on that right now with the November build date. There's not necessarily we're not planning a public process. We want a design team and the street teams. We want to select someone, build it into our permit, and the idea is we want to create. We are testing a facility. We don't know how this is going to function. It might be something that it might not function well, and there might be unforeseen issues, and we might be out like 3 weeks later power washing it off the, well, we have to go into it with that the wide open. So we're using this as a test case. The idea is that we're trying to get the satellite into orbit and not land it on the moon.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
And just for point of clarification, this is just activated like in larger cities and not necessarily like closed off? Is it, with some kind of barrier from the parking, or is there a barrier?
Talk about the armadillos.
Oh, between the parking and the multi-use. So right, so see those black hash marks? There is there's a variety of treatments that can be used, and there's a thing called an armadillo, which is like it's almost like a speed bump's younger brother or sister. They're really small, and it just creates some buffered space. Let me see if I can pull one up for you. So that's the idea for that. And then the idea too is also to use some bollards those things that stick up. Again, working with the city, sort of like, okay, so the guy running the snow plow, how is he going to know where the armadillos are? And so we will be putting in some bollards as well.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I'd just like to add a couple comments. Mike, I think that in staff who've been working on this, I think that this is like a perfect example of how we need to approach some of these more innovative ideas downtown across the board, not just transportation, but we all visit cities where permanent systems like this are in place and we see how well they function. And a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And a lot of people will see something like this as being fairly radical, even in kind of a temporary state. But it's a really good transition stage. So I am so super psyched about this. This design is so perfect for the street. The street is perfect for this. I think the visitors to Asheville will enjoy seeing how we're going about this, or the folks who are actually doing this are going about it in a really creative way. I would just like to suggest that I know there are going to be challenges with some of these curb cut reductions with some of the business owners, and just really careful hand-holding with them, I think, can go a long way. I think when they see the full vision, everybody should be as excited as we are here. At least I am, and y'all. And I think that if there are things that you can do to try to keep the naysayers from saying things that are a little negative about it, would be great. And one example of that would be the planter concept. Just have in place a plan how these things get watered, and don't let plants die. Something really simple like that. Naysayers grab simple stuff, and that's something that they can complain about. But I'm in so full support of this. This is amazing.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
I think we
Oh.
have a speaker.
Oh, yeah, so, couple of things, yes, we have naysayer, and I'm working really hard to get in contact with those property owners. I said, most of the people that I've contacted on the corridor are actually really, excited. Also, what I'm going to do is, we're gonna start printing these plans up, and I'm gonna set up like Cox Avenue hours, where I'll be at, Vortex Donuts for 2 hours, I'll be at Tasty Beverage for 2 hours, I'll be at Wicked Weed for 2 hours with a plan. It sounds exhausting, right? Coffee. But bouncing around the court, such hard work. Being around the corridor and making ourselves as accessible as possible. That's a very high priority.
I want to add that I'm also very excited. I think I have seen where this has worked in other cities, but oftentimes those cities have had large anchor businesses that could afford to be more visible in the marketing area, and we have a strong local business economy, and so I just want to be sure that you're partnering with organizations that can really help emphasize the local collaboration between this expansion, because I haven't seen it really duplicated with a strong local business market. So I think that's the opportunity, as well as making sure both work very well together.
Okay, yes, absolutely. In fact, I just had a meeting with Wicked Weed yesterday, who's their business is right outside of this mural, and sort of talking about that kind of approach. The idea is that we're not doing something to the city or to the stakeholders, but we're doing something with them. That's always the approach that we try to take, and the finesse of that is.
And piggybacking on what you said, I'm so proud of you, and I know that you've worked so hard for all of this, so I get it. But another thing, obviously, maybe goes without saying, incorporating local businesses and local artists in everything that you do within this, I think, will go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Local artists is a critical component of, and let me right now invite you all to it. On November 1st and the 3rd is when we're going to be building this, and this is going to be built by our community. Volunteers, the construction, are people from our community. We're going to mobilize anywhere between 100 and 150 volunteers who come out and participate in this work. The bike lanes, the planters, all of that is going to be built and put in place by our citizens.
Mike, you also mentioned that you're going to be collecting data and learning a lot from this process. do you have a mechanism in place in order to collect that data, and how will that be?
Right, so we have, so one of the things that we're identifying is like what data to collect, and obviously like, you know, vehicle movements, bicycle, head. The other thing that we really want to, just like comes to the top of the list, is assess how well this curb or sidewalk extension functions. Let me give you one example of that is there, you know, do cyclists on the downhill, do they prefer to be in the travel lane, or do they prefer to be in the sort of the protected facility? You know, we don't know that, and that's something that, you know, when we collect information on how that functions, we'll be able to make a better recommendation, you know, to the city when it actually goes to be redone. So there are all types of data to collect to answer your question, and some of it we have identified, and others we have not, and we are right now. Our capacity is basically the old-fashioned way with a clipboard, a pencil, and volunteer. But we also are looking at incorporating technology into the data collection, but we are limited currently on the capacity to do so.
I love it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You becoming a permanent employee of National Alexis is a wonderful thing for the city.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm also willing to volunteer my time to create you a web app-based tool that helps you collect data in some way.
Oh yeah, okay, I will definitely take you up on that. And again, like, you know, all this thank you, it needs to be shared with the city. This has been such a tremendous partnership between the Street Tweaks team. It hasn't just been Asheville on Bikes, it's AARP, the Blue Ridge Bicycle Club, and you know, the city of Asheville as well. This has been so far a really great partnership.
I was wondering what total budget is.
So the budget for this project, it's about $150,000. So.
I don't think we could do that to a city streets government.
Well, the city just spent $2.5 million on Martin Luther King.
Ooh, okay. Any other questions, comments, or appreciations for Mr. Sewell?
Awesome.
It is. Good
Right.
luck. Thanks so much
Thanks.
for coming today.
Yeah, no,
Sharing
sorry
all
I'm
of
late.
this.
Sorry.
Thank you for your daughter for being such a good trooper.
Yeah, she's awesome.
All
right, cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Have a
Yep,
great day.
bye.
Okay. Mr. Bellman. What is going on in 2020? What happened to 2019?
I am. So, do you have to switch the where it's here? No, this is plugged right into the station. Let me see if I can do this. Hold on a second. Oh, this connects to that. This is, it says computer.
So this is the part that we go into.
Yeah, that one. Is your computer available to pull this from Google?
Yeah.
Do you still have that email I shared with you yesterday? No, just design is good. Great. We got that.
Okay, so we've got a couple just stepped out for a second. This is a big factor we mentioned in the downtown census we did last year, like destination that we had. We're gonna do it again this winter.
Okay.
Have some questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one more return, just one more. We'll take a minute, Ruth, to say that I talked with Andrew Fletcher about the downtown master plan update subcommittee, and his progress on that, and he was still trying to figure out, who stakeholder representatives might be. If you recall, we asked him to come to us with, like, who might join the subcommittee, what would those roles be? So he's still hammering that out. There's talk of maybe having a little, meeting to discuss what that might look like if we decide to invite a committee, and there's more than a certain number, we'll have to make it a public meeting, but it's a great time to share your thoughts or ideas with you on how that might look. All right, Ruth is back. You ready, Tom?
Yeah. Okay, good morning. My name is John Philbin. I'm with the Community and Economic Development Department, and I handle welfare special events and public property. I'll try to make this presentation as brief as possible, but we're asking for your feedback and comments about the year 2020, and that isn't 19 next year. This is actually a bit further into the future. For special events, we haven't planned that far ahead because you probably imagine our 2019 calendar is already complete. So looking into 2020, we also have an opportunity with our strategic event partnerships where the city provides in-kind resources to nonprofit organizations that helps them produce events on public property. That cycle begins in 2020 again for the next 3 years. So this is a good time to take a look at what the city's priorities are and how we're using public space for festivals and events, and kind of take a look at where we came from and where we'd like to go. So achieving balance, that's not something that we necessarily do in our current policy. And we're approaching maximum capacity. So with maximum capacity, what we're meaning is that we take in, with a 1.5 person office, about 200 permit applications per year. We have a team of representatives across all city departments that reviews applications and provides approval on their technical expertise. That equals about 350 or more, maybe 375 permitted special occasions every year. Most of those actually happen downtown. And so that's why your committee is very important to us when we're thinking about what our proposals would be for the future of our public space uses. When you're thinking about dividing all those up, we have one downtown property for festivals, that happens to be Pack Square Park. We have one community park with limited parking, that's Carrier Park, and the parking there is probably going to get a little bit more limited when we start widening in Weir Road. We have one new riverfront property that will open up along 14 Riverside Drive, Jeepway Park, that corridor right there, which will be approximately the same area that we have in Pack Square and Warrior Terrace combined. So it'll be able to handle some access and some uses over there, not a whole lot. Right now, we're thinking about Looking into 2020, as we continue to grow, we grow somewhere around 3 to 5% per year when you think about the events that fall off and the new events that come on. We can't necessarily sustain the same volume without there being some adjustments made. And so the questions that we're kind of asking ourselves right now, and that we've been asking through research and surveys with other cities in North Carolina, through the downtown census, other cities across the state, through the Convention Visitors Bureau, we're asking, how do we create these balances? How do we maintain our public spaces? How do we promote sustainable growth? How do we maintain the spirit of Asheville and not find ourselves in a situation we have just a lot of outside influence coming in? Because as we build more hotels, as we have more tourism, we're becoming a more attractive location for people that have events that are touring to come into Asheville and have a touring event for the day. And we only have so much space to allocate. We allocate public space based on a priority that has existed since before I came on board about 11 or 12 years ago. So basically that gives priority to the city as first, partnership events are second. Then we have nonprofit events that are open to the public, and then those are just of primary interest to the organization. And lastly, those commercial ventures that are for profit. We're seeing more of those commercial ventures coming into Asheville, wanting to hold their events here. As you imagine, as we become a more popular city, that's happening. And they're competing for the same space that our nonprofit and local events are competing for. Now you see that the nonprofit events do have a priority, and if you look at the graphic, that shows you that if we have all the events at one time to look at, we can make a real easy decision as to which events would be best for the city, which events promote our local culture and things. But we don't get all of the applications at one time. People come up with ideas to do events and submit applications all year long. So the priority for allocation doesn't quite work like the graphic there, where we can make one comprehensive decision at the beginning of every year for what it's going to look like 2 years from now. So we're taking things as they come in. The questions that we have for you today, we've boiled down into 3 areas. One is grow, one is maintain, and one is stabilize. And we're asking you to think about that. When you think about Asheville's future in 2020, would you like us to grow? And basically that means continue on course. Would you like us to continue what we're doing when you think about the downtown environment? Every weekend of good weather season, when you see all the festivals and events that are happening in our park, downtown and Pritchard Park and a little bit on Haywood Street. We're doing that first come, first serve. If you want us to continue on course, we will see continued growth. We will allow the market to self-regulate based on demand. We will see more competition between events. Not actually, I don't want to say fighting, but competing for that same property to determine which one is going to be most valuable. And we'll definitely need to make higher investments in maintaining our capital improvements, our properties, our administrative costs, things like that, in order to maintain that continued growth. Would we want to maintain? And when I say maintain, I mean a moratorium. And everybody hates the word moratorium because it sounds so official and hard and like, moratorium. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some cities have implemented moratoriums when they find that they are just at maximum capacity. They definitely don't want to kick events out of the space, but they also don't know that they are ready to make strategic decisions on who best to happen. So they've somewhat closed the door to new activities. They defer new applications to a later time. They let them know that, I'm sorry, we have all of the events that we can handle right now. Those are the events that we're going to keep. They came first, we're going to keep them. That's what's most important, is that they were first in line. A moratorium also will include some modern investments. And we would have to evaluate that periodically to see how the moratorium is working and whether that we're able to sustain the current activity that we have right now, which is a little bit high. Or stabilize, which I'll be honest to tell you, and through our research, we believe that stabilization could be the most strategic decision that the city could make. That talks about using some different policy direction to prioritize access. It looks at maybe increasing more times when the property in the park out here is not being used, times when it's passively available for people who use Splashville or do other things like that on the weekends. And of course, we would be slightly adjusting fees to help regulate what is necessary in order to support the property like that. But we'd be looking at evaluating our special events and festivals that happen downtown based on highest and best use. So there would be an additional lead time necessary for applications in some cases if you want that. Now, I want to separate this before I show you some photographs between the difference between festivals and special events. So festivals are generally those 1,000-person events with tents and maybe some food and beverage and merchandise. We have festivals that are art festivals, which are pretty much similar to maybe a mall or a shopping experience where there's lots of tents going on there. We have festivals like Leaf Downtown, things like that, that have all of the components involved, food, beverage, entertainment, all of those things. I'm not talking about special events that happen where you may be walking as a fundraiser, you might be having a wedding in a park, you might be doing yoga in a park. All those things are special events that we permit through our office, but they're not as impactful, and we're not necessarily talking about those. And we're not talking about impacting those types of more event but passive uses at the same time. Those things can continue as they are. We're talking about the festival uses. And right now, if you look at all the weekends during the year, we have a festival in Paxburg Park every weekend, pretty much from June through the end of the season. So that's, we're moving into May now, and we're almost into the time when the park isn't open. Right now, they replace the grass at Paxburg Park. Every year, it's closed from November through April, so the grass has time to take root. And by the end of the year, we are ready to replace the grass again. Now, I'm not saying that grass is the priority for the city, that the public wants to make sure we have grass. In spite of the events, the grass is the most important piece, but there might be a way for us to do a better job of balancing the types of uses that happen in this space. So I want to show you these photos here. This was Paxburg Park when I first joined the city, actually. I looked out at the 4th floor, and this is what I was looking at as they were constructing this park. When I joined the city, there were no events in Paxburg Park, and I guess you can imagine why. We had a few events that happened at Martin Luther King Park. We had a few events that happened over by the Grove Arcade. We had them scattered around. When Paxburg Park came online, we started gradually moving events back into the park. We saw a lot of passive uses happening originally as that started. We saw the fountain was operational at that point. We saw some mixed uses where we could keep Splash Lawn, we could keep some vending going on the property. All of that worked well. I'll just show you some other things here. So this is almost as it's grown. Now we have lots of tents going on the weekends, lots of people, tons of people, because we have so many more hotels than we did before we built Paxburg Park. So we've got lots of visitors coming into town. This was a picture that I took after the very first festival that had tents on the lawn in Paxburg Park this year. If you can imagine where the tents were, most people would say they were on both sides of that green strip. They were not on both sides of the green strip. The tents helped protect the lawn. In fact, those areas on both sides, those were a double row of tents right down the middle. And those areas that are no longer grass were the areas where all the traffic was going back and forth. So that was one festival at the very beginning of June. We continue to use the park for festivals. Lots of events. Pax Square, lots of vendor market, art markets, things like that going on in Pax Square. These are just different festivals, big events down in the lawn. And you can see this is kind of towards the end of the year. You can see the grass in the terrace. It's not necessarily green, but it's not dirt, so it's okay. But it wouldn't really recover on its own. This is after an event. This is what could happen. This was actually this year. So you can see that there are times when the park, we have completely overused the park maybe if we wanted to have grass. And there is a lot of cleanup that's necessary after festivals. That's always the case. It's not necessarily wrong for one festival or another. It just happens because festivals create waste, so they can be cleaned up. And this is a picture I think someone took of Paxburg Park. I found it on Google of kind of this image of how the park would be in the fall. But right now in the fall, there will be a fence around the grass right now, so that we can replace it. But special events do amazing things. Our study has shown that the community likes the special events. They don't necessarily think that we're doing too many. They have a great value, $2.7 million in additional revenues through a 3-year study that we were funded through ARC to produce. They do play a significant role in supporting our economy, so we are not advocating, certainly not from the special events office, to eliminate special events in any way. We are just asking, what do you think when we're talking about balance, and what you would necessarily appreciate for staff to consider when we're coming up with new policies for the year 2020, which we would prefer to align with our partnership cycle, which will be at the very beginning of this year, in 2019. So that's it. That's kind of what I can send forward to. I'm just hoping that you would have some comments or feedback that we could include in our process.
Question.
Sure.
On the, does the city have the ability to charge, for instance, a higher fee for a for-profit event as opposed to a nonprofit?
We do. We do have that process. We currently offer a fairly significant discount to nonprofit organizations. Most events are nonprofit organizations.
And do you currently scale fees based on the number of expected attendees?
No, we have property use fees. There are fees that are scaled based on attendees, but those have to do with development fees, fire inspections, things like that. For a property fee, we don't have a scalable property fee based on that.
That's interesting.
There's nothing blocking you from doing that, right?
No, we can raise fees.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you was multi-year events. Do you have are these, I saw your numbers are pretty high. Do you take events each year as like a solo kind of in the year? Or do you look at multi-year opportunities based on I'm putting them together. If you scale based on number of attendees, so like if you're 500, it's this price, 1,000, 1,500, and then also add on to the multi-year opportunity with a maximum of years. I wonder if that's something that you could look at.
Sure. So you're thinking about more of a continue on course process, but try to allow the market to regulate based on demand, which would be supported through increasing fees and limiting availability or making decisions on availability based on qualifications of each event.
Yes, and just with my background in events, one of the things that happened a lot when I was actively producing events across the country is they get easier and easier, and you have less ways to a lot of things the more years you have down in a particular city, right? So that's why I'm bringing this up, because some of those demanding issues, whether they be time or also waste, end up becoming collapsed if there's like some kind of scale built into how many times a business gets to or an organization gets to do an event.
You're saying like making decisions based on, for instance, we currently allow events to maintain their date from year to year for consistency purposes. And you're suggesting that policy remain in place, or that it be adjusted in some way?
It could be maybe adjusted, that perhaps you get to maintain your date based on specific numbers, also maintain your date based on specific performance. Like if you have a lot of waste or whatever, then that actually gets factored into some of the decision matrix. I'm not suggesting you should change the entire decision matrix.
No.
These are just little tidbits.
Sure, little tweaks. We're still on the continue on course
Sure.
option of this, okay?
What's the general overall expense annually to maintain this park, including the song, cleanup, and all of the things?
I don't know that number.
That would be really helpful. Because when you started this conversation, what I thought I was hearing was we need more park places. But I am very much continue on course person, my personal input. When I see those pictures, I'm reminded of what we really want to see in downtown, which is people, activity, fun, families, events. It kills me that we kill the grass every year, but other cities face this. Other cities actually maintain the grass better, no offense to us, but there perhaps are ways we can be improving this, or scheduling breaks in the summer to reseed, or whatever that looks like. But I would be very disappointed if we scale back on events at all.
Okay.
I love that you prioritize them, so that it's not just whoever pays the most gets in the door, that we can maintain or at least kind of look at the overall culture of what we're doing. But I wouldn't want us to shrink back at all.
All right. Very good.
While we're talking about the grass, I know there's some parks represented here, but is there like maybe a long-term strategic plan, or maybe even just like switching the turf to something that's a lot more hardy? Fescue, I know that there's some hybrid varieties out there that go dormant in the winter, but New Belgium just put one in their turf, their lawn area. I just, we love the concept of the green, but there's nothing worse than going out there today and just seeing something that we love to death.
Sure.
And I just think we need a long-term plan for that space.
Yeah, I think that if the intent of the community is to maintain the volume of events that are happening in the property, then the alternative there is to make stronger investments in the property, recommend stronger investments in the property, stronger maintenance, stronger, things like that that help maintain a property that can support the volume of activity right now. And so with that direction, then we would be looking at another plan, which could include things like required modifications to site plans to help reduce some of the impact, maybe some improvements to the property that would put in tent pads in certain areas, even to the extent that this may be completely unattractive, that there be some areas there that are having grass that are actually brick pavers with grass, in this, the Italian kind of brick paver areas that are developed so that it can support more of these frequent tent placement types of uses like that. So that more is then going towards the investment side of it to continue growing, try to invest as much as possible to support the activity that we have and do our best to take in as many and as often as we can, as equitably as we can.
That's what
And
came
it's
to mind.
strategic growth.
Yeah, well,
Not
like
just
hardscape.
unrunning growth, strategic growth.
And when you say strategic growth, strategic
Like
in the selection,
yes, selection, like you decided, priority on local uses and nonprofits, what we currently do, because there is a limit, there's only so many weekends.
right, but would every weekend be satisfactory?
I think so, and to take on from our previous discussion about tactical urbanism, looking at this in an innovative way. So, are there changes to hardscape or temporary installations? If you know that all the festivals that are gonna have tents are gonna create 2 walkways, what can we do to prevent those walkways from destroying grass for those 2 days? There's gotta be better ways to do this. But I think what I'm hearing from you is, you're looking for our input on, do we just keep going at this full steam?
I feel like that's what I'm hearing.
I know that I hear from merchants that tell me that October is really their busiest month, and when there are events downtown, what happens is when there are large events, that their regular customers can't come downtown, and it really kind of impacts how much time people stay in a retail setting, because they're more outside. So I know that it really harms small businesses in the city if every weekend there's a huge event. So I would like to see us kind of stabilize some of our events and look at more local, not these profit-making commercial venues that really want to come into town. The other thing is, I'm wondering if the city has ever considered artificial turf. Montreat College put in some artificial turf, I believe it was a year ago, and it's made with walnut holes, and it looks almost like regular grass.
Now, I know that's been suggested, like changing the actual types of grass and that types of thing. I'm sure the parks can consider all of those things, just trying to make sure that when we're creating our proposal for our 2020 partnerships, that we're not suggesting people apply for things that we're not prepared to take on. So it sounds like we are going to be encouraging people to apply and to produce based on your recommendations as it stands. Like, obviously, there's other factors that come into play, but that's what I'm hearing back.
Well, actually, it's funny, before Ruth said that, I was gonna say, actually, if we wanna continue to activate with locals, I do think there needs to be some thought to breadth. Constant activation is gonna eventually wear out, and then you're not gonna have a particular local base that maybe loves being downtown, but they avoid it when there's all the festivals actually in the mix, and then it's gonna take a lot more energy getting those people back downtown once the activation begins to wane. It may not be in 2020, it may be in 2023, but I think there's a balance that needs to be maintained of maybe it's 85% usage of the weekends with 15% breadth of people actually knowing, hey, come join and enjoy downtown as a family, and maybe there isn't something to do, but that's the piece that keeps the local engagement.
Sure.
I don't know, I don't have the right number.
I think we have to be very careful with growth. I'm more inclined to talk about stabilization because, I think with more outsiders coming in, wanting to put on festivals, make money, and then leave our community, we are not able to enjoy the multiplier effect of what that festival does bring to our downtown and to our local businesses. And also also, the likelihood of us getting a festival that is more similar to, and I only say this because we all have experience with it, what Belshare had morphed into, bringing in a lot of non-local vendors, blocking, local businesses, taking away business from local businesses, and it became something that was very hard for our downtown businesses to handle every year. That's very possible if we're taking in, as many festivals as possible.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask, the selection process for the partners, is that going to stay the same? And then can you tell us a little more about what that process is?
The process would be this fall. We submit an RFP asking for proposals from organizations, nonprofits that produce events on public space that help council achieve their goals in different areas of work. And then those proposals are evaluated and scored by a public group, and the recommendations are brought forward to council committee. And we give them kind of our suggestions. We show them the numbers in a variety of ways, how much things will cost if you do all of them, which ones would be highest on the board in this way, highest on the board in that way, and then council makes the determination as to what organizations they can support and how much resources they have to offer.
And are any of the past organizations going to be grandfathered in if they propose?
There's not a plan to grandfather in, but traditionally, the organizations that have produced events under partnership in the past have continued to produce those events as long as they're effective and continue to apply.
And the last thing I want to say is the studies are super helpful. The 2.7 million to local vendors is an interesting, great number. Have there been, or are we thinking about expanding that study or partnering with specific events to put on more, or maybe you do have these numbers, maybe the study was robust enough, I think I have seen it, but to look at also what that impact was on downtown as a whole.
An event-by-event economic impact study hasn't been done, just probably because the events that we have in Asheville tend not to be large enough that warrant the expense of an economic impact study, like you would if you did maybe a Belshare or a Super Bowl or something like that, where you're paying a lot for one of those types of things. But there probably could be something done through the census or something like that that pertains to a particular event, maybe one of the large ones, just to get an idea of what that is.
I have one final comment. So I've had the privilege of working with a few local festival producers this year on counseling, in a counseling situation. And I've said on several occasions, in order to continue to make festivals viable for our downtown, you have to consider your vendor mix and making sure you're not just pulling from all outside the region, but you're really thoughtfully considering the economic situation for small business growth here. So I know that doesn't exactly live in your department, but I'm wondering if there's a way to look at that as part of the decision tree in terms of percentage of vendor mix that would be local or regional based business versus completely out of the area. Again, I don't know, I'm just throwing it in there.
All right.
When do you have to make these decisions?
If we stay on track, we'll be making a recommendation to PE in October and bringing something forward to City Council if it gets through PE by the end of October. So this is
I
fairly.
was thinking about the next census and asking some of this information.
Yeah.
But we should still ask.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we should still continue to ask and to get this feedback. It's really helpful. I think as far as the events go, when you do see, we are at that maximum capacity point right now, community-wise, where we're seeing that, we don't have the volunteer capacity a lot of times to adequately support the events, or we don't have the vendor capacity to fill the spaces, but we have lots of community interest. So we're hoping that can, if we're going with the continue to grow, that hopefully that volunteer base, that local vendor base will continue to grow to meet those needs of those events, so we can still continue to maintain higher quality events.
Could I just, do we, well, we can have a little public comment. Anybody have any questions for John? Okay, Tobias is gonna have to excuse himself because we're already a little over. Come on up, if you could just state your name.
our two residential representatives aren't here today.
Okay.
So I would like to say that I think that it might be a good idea to leave some weekends so that people who live downtown can use the park as a park. Especially with the increased number of apartment buildings that are going up, and to me that says we're going to have a lot more people who work during the day who live downtown and can only use the park.
That's a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so John, let's touch base on census questions.
Okay.
And what the rest of the process. Anything else, John? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have one more thing to discuss. If everybody has a minute, it's kind of important. It's retreat planning. So we've been talking about this commission takes a trip every year, or has the opportunity to take a trip every year. We've been trying to think about what it is we want to accomplish in this trip and where we might go to do such. I have a suggestion. Do others have suggestions? Because of our annual retreat, that's our goal is at the end of these 2 years to have an explosion of residential population in all income levels in downtown. Since we're kind of working towards that goal, it seems to me that it would make sense to travel to a place where this has already been achieved, and also to potentially a place where ground floor activation is already consistent in there downtown, because these are two big things we've been talking about. So my suggestion for that is Charleston. Now, we don't have to make this decision today, but I think what we're trying to do is get some momentum on where we might go and what these other places are, and also maybe who would go with us. Like, does it make sense for the planning board to join us? So,
Sandra, you're gonna reach out to them and see if they're interested. I do wanna note that the commission hasn't gone to visit another city every year, and we did do that last year with the riverfront. The riverfront goes every other year. I just wanna be mindful of it. I think it would be helpful from a resources perspective if there was another commission like planning and zoning that are interested. And I just wanna.
yeah, we haven't done this every year yet. I didn't mean to imply that we have, but when we did go last year, we teamed up with multimodal and went down to see some greenway installation. It was remarkable, and I feel like we all learned a lot. We also saw a pop-up planning office, which now we've replicated when you guys did those house look, which is great. So we learn things every time, and those are both things we're trying to work on. So I'm suggesting that maybe mull it over, think about other places that might make sense to reach those goals, or if you have different goals.
I've got just a thought. I think that, just as a general question, do we have is it a one-day trip, or do we have the option of staying overnight? So Charleston's probably an overnight, and I guess it's a big budget consideration.
Well, so that's the thing. So it is a day's drive. Like Georgia, we went in 4-hour drive, got up really early, got on a bus, and came back really late that night.
Yeah.
Now, there was talk, some of us that were saying, if we did that, perhaps at our own leisure or at personal expense, we might stay overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we're not suggesting that
Okay.
there's a budget for all of us to get a hotel. We have a very, very small budget.
So, I guess the second question, is there an opportunity for like private sector sponsorship? To assist volunteers in expanding, because I know we want to avoid misconceptions.
I would say, I totally appreciate this conversation. I think that, of course, there's an opportunity, and we would love to see cities, partner organizations, including the county, step up to the plate, but my caution is that right now, we have a very limited amount of actual resources and time, as well as money, to arrange for that kind of thing. So part of it is, if you're talking about having a retreat this year, I do not think there is any way, unless it magically falls from the sky.
And I was
we
gonna
can
say,
go with that.
maybe, thinking about next year, if you wanted to do something like that.
And I was just gonna add, if there's a way we can add like structure to that, I'm all for that if we put structure in place first, because I think avoiding the appearance of collusion or future collusion would be important and upfront, like, so it doesn't look like we're partnering with someone and then 5 years later that there's a deal that's done, and I just wanna avoid all of that.
The collusion with who?
Anybody.
So, what you're saying, so if it happens to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's perhaps if a real estate developer funded our trip and then they became a proposed project. Yeah. So, okay, so maybe what we need to do is keep this topic on the agenda and maybe come up with some kind of format, that is a multi-year plan of what we might do.
And I know Dave isn't here, it seems like maybe one of them he was interested in.
He was.
Or some side discussions. We are going into October.
realistic about time.
And some of it corresponds with the downtown master plan updates when we get into the, more of the UBO-based stuff, not the public space realm. So we have some time. We're not trying to make this happen next month. Be thinking about the, and be thinking about maybe what that structure could look like. We'll keep talking about it. All right, Toby's not here, so I'm gonna say motion to adjourn. He needs motions to adjourn. Thank you.